Okay, well, welcome. I'm so excited about this class, curriculum, because we have been working on this here at Living Wisdom School Portland for, ever since we started, right? You're always looking for, now, how do I teach this? What do I teach? How will this be different than the teaching I did before I came here? Through the years, we've had a lot of people visit the school wanting to start their own school. And the first thing they always ask is, can we buy your curriculum? Or can we see your curriculum? And we have to go, I for a long time I had the stock answer, well, it's about consciousness, not curriculum. It's true, but that was also a little bit of a cop-out because, there are definite things that we do. And if you go to the different Living Wisdom schools, you'll find we have these things in common with other schools. Yet, every classroom is original, and every teacher comes up with their own original ideas. And we have a lot in common with curricula in all schools, of course, because all kids need to learn to read and write and compute and cooperate and follow directions and all those traditional things. So those of you who've taken, and I think as everybody in here has, except for Craig, has taken the Education for Life teacher training to this point, and so you already know about specific gravity, and you may have forgotten that term, but energy levels of the kids, and how that influences what you're doing in the classroom. And you already know about tools of maturity, the 4 tools, which are what? Anybody? Somebody besides a Living Wisdom Portland teacher. Supriya, do you know the 4 tools?
Intellect.
Yes.
Feeling.
Yes.
Body and will.
Good, body and will. And how those are really, really important aspect of what we do and enter into the curriculum. But as time has gone on and people keep asking us, what is the curriculum? And homeschool parents ask, and I think, well, how are you going to teach cooperation when if you're homeschooling one child at home? That's going to be a little hard. And then what's the spiritual curriculum? Quote, spiritual curriculum, because when people would say, what's the curriculum? And I say, well, we teach reading and writing and math and all those things, and if you go into the classroom, at some points it might look like a public school classroom because they might be studying American history or they might be studying ocean life, and that might be studied in any school, right? But if you stay around, you'll find there are differences because we're always conscious of teaching with all 4 tools of maturity, but you have to look subtly beneath the surface to find that. But yes, there is something else. People would say, well, what do you teach the kids about God? And especially parents who maybe don't have any religion whatsoever, or parents who have had bad experiences, perhaps in the church they grew up in, where religion and God were more like punitive. You better do this or else. And so they have a bad feeling about that, and they have spiritual aspirations, really. They're attracted to the school because we talk about calmness and compassion and cooperation, and they know that's what they want for their children. Well, what's the God piece have to do with it? So as a staff, we started talking about these things. What do we teach? Other than, well, we do teach that love and universal consciousness and intelligence are synonymous with God. But what is it? We find that so much of what we teach, we simply teach through who we are, don't we? And I'll come back to this at the end today, but of course the most important element of the curriculum is the teacher. Because the kids, as you know, if you've studied Education for Life or if you've read my book, Calm and Compassionate Children, the kids absorb really each other's energy and the energy of the teacher. And they, no matter what you see, they look at what you do, right? No matter what you say, they look at what you do. And it seems like the kids every year get more and more sensitive. Maybe that's my imagination, but they also feel what you are projecting. Even if you don't say it in words, they feel it. I was sharing with somebody earlier today that one of the kids who is a favorite of mine, of course we aren't supposed to have favorites, right? And we don't ultimately, in that I think each one of us loves each child and the soul and the spark that within each child. But definitely we have personalities and our own tools of maturity that sort of are more in sync with some kids than others, right? That there might be a child in your class that you choose to spend time with outside of school for your own pleasure. Now maybe a different one you choose because you know they need you. But for your own pleasure, do any of you have favorites, or is that just me? Do you? Okay. So this child is one of my very, very favorites. And he told his mom that he didn't think I liked him. And I was stunned. And a little hurt, not hurt, but a little like sad, because I thought, how could he think that? And I started tuning in more to how I was with him, and I realized because he was one of my favorites and I see him a lot outside school and talk to him a lot outside school, in school I make a concerted effort to be very neutral with him so the other children don't feel he's a favorite of mine. Well, what does he feel from that? He felt this determination I had to be neutral and thought, well, I must not like him. So that really taught me a lot, taught me how to relax a little bit. But just to say, I know you've all experienced this, haven't you, where you find yourself saying one thing, but the feeling you're saying it with is maybe a different thing. It happens to all of us, you know, when some child keeps interrupting and you're asking them to please be patient, but do you say it patiently? Has that ever happened? Yeah. And when it happens, we just need to learn to take a deep breath, and if it's appropriate, say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm feeling impatient now. And that's a great thing to model for the children. But that would be part of the curriculum, wouldn't it? Because what do the children learn from that? They learn a spiritual quality, which is introspection and the ability to admit a mistake and change. And what a wonderful, wonderful thing to teach them. As one educator said, teaching kids to count is fine, but teaching them what counts is best. I love that quote. And that's what it is that we put very first in an Education for Life classroom, is what counts. And what counts, I don't know, what do you feel is something that's most important, that really counts, that you want children to get when they come into your classroom? Volunteer? Yes.
Safety.
You want them to feel safe, both physically and emotionally.
Fun and joy.
You want them to find out that life and learning can be fun and enjoyable.
Curiosity.
You want to, of course, encourage curiosity.
Community.
A sense of community, and that everyone, you know, and didn't Erica demonstrate this morning when I made the effort to make all of you into community by getting you to get to know each other? Left out Bob. So she saved me. But actually, I know from experience Bob's going to be running around tuning things in, and but that's not a good excuse.
To be able to feel strong in their own strengths, what they're good at.
To find out what your own strengths are and be able to build on them, and know that everybody has them and they all look different in each other. And that's one thing that I feel like many, many schools don't succeed in. It's more like the kids who are successful academically and athletically, maybe even musically. And it's getting, you know, now with the charter schools where we have the arts and this and that and the other, there are more places for kids to excel in different areas. But there's still some areas, like the feeling area, that you just don't see a whole lot of recognition of the child who's the most compassionate and the kindest. And sometimes that might be a child who academically is not even above average, but maybe the average as far as their academic work, and yet they always know what everybody's feeling. They always know, you know, there's one child in the class that you can ask, was so-and-so absent yesterday? And they'll know. Some of the other kids might not have even noticed, because they excel in that sense of community, that feeling connection with everybody. So all these things enter into what is the curriculum. Today we're going to be especially focusing on these two areas of the Education for Life curriculum: personal development and cooperation. So that all of you who've read Education for Life, you know in the chapter on curriculum that the curriculum is divided into 6 areas. And the reason for that isn't because it's that. There are parts that are very different. but some of it is just exactly what might be taught in any school, right? And Education for Life can be universal. We have students in the teacher training, not this year, but last year we had a good many in India, and we have one this year who's going to teach in India next year. We have students in Europe, we have students in Canada. That's not such a different culture. But in every place, some of what they teach is going to look like what's taught in other schools there, because culturally, that's what's appropriate for them to learn. In Slovenia, they're not going to need to learn Oregon history, are they? Maybe they don't even need to learn that in Oregon, but certainly it'd be relevant and a great thing to learn if you're going to go on field trips, and a great way to learn that every place has a history that influences today, and the geography and the landscape influence today. But some of the things will be different from culture to culture. What doesn't change is specific gravity, levels of energy, tools of maturity don't change. That's universal. And these new names are more to just get us thinking differently and thinking originally and thinking about what is the core of the subject that I want my children to get. So for example, sciences, instead of calling it sciences, doesn't our Earth, our universe? Okay, first of all, you're in it. It says our, so each one of us is part of it. So it's not something out there that we're learning about. We're related to it. It has to do with us. We're part of it. So do you see, just changing the name slightly can change our slant on it. But these would be what we consider the sciences. Personal development, how to be a friend, how to work in a group. Well, actually, those are cooperation. Personal development. Help me, Lorna. You wrote this down for us.
Using your willpower and self-control.
Using your own willpower and self-control. Starts out in kindergarten, trying to hold, or preschool, trying to hold that pencil and make a letter. In that way, it also, and not interrupting when the rest of the class. I'm sure that Helen can give us lots of examples of how they're learning willpower and self-control if it's part of personal development. In the book, Education for Life, some of the very most elementary subjects for the kids, the ages that many of us are working with, aren't even mentioned that come here, like learning things like to skip and jump rope, right? It can be physical, spiritual, or mental personal development. Can be any of those. So it includes a wide range of things. And it includes part of what we might call the spiritual curriculum, that is, getting to know yourself, understanding what you're feeling inside. And it also, truth is universally rooted, so other people have said, let me think where this would be that I can read it to you. My book, here we go. For example, any of you know who Howard Gardner is? Famous educator who came up with the 7 intelligences, 6 or 7, and then there's a new one, naturalist. Anyway, he says, interpersonal intelligence refers to having an understanding of yourself, of knowing who you are, what you can do, what you want to do, how you react to things, which things to avoid, and which things to gravitate toward. Wow, if your child learned all that in school, wouldn't you think that that was huge? We are drawn to people who have a good understanding of themselves because those people tend not to screw up. They tend to know what they can do. They tend to know what they can't do. And they tend to know where to go if they need help. And that's one of the strengths I see in our graduates, like Erica and many of her cohorts. And one of the great things about Facebook is you can keep up with all these people from your past and see what they're doing and how psychologically healthy they all seem to me. And I think that's true. I think it's getting more and more true as each succeeding generation in general. But I do think we have had graduates that said, for example, Kashi McGilloway from Seattle said when his family in, where's his family? What's the country where they speak Dutch? Holland. Netherlands. Said to him, well, what was it? He went to public school and high school, but Education for Life schools up through 8th grade. Well, what's the difference in the schools? And he said, well, gosh, when I was at a Living Wisdom school, everybody did their best. And at public school, everybody's is trying to figure out what is the least they can do and get by. Wow, that is amazing, isn't it? And another student that who now designs software for pacemakers, told one of his former teachers at a wedding when he saw her many years later as a man in his mid-20s, he said, well, I learned a lot in high school and college that's helped me with my job, but everything I learned that helped me with life, I learned at Living Wisdom School. Wow. That's saying a lot. And much of that has to do with personal development. So we're going to talk a lot about that this morning. Self-expression and communication. Well, that's, of course, what we think of as English and writing, but also music, art, all of those things when we're doing them, when we're expressing ourselves. When we're studying them as from outside ourselves, like art appreciation or music appreciation, then they come under wholeness. Understanding people is what we think of as the social studies, right? But there's some things that are included in understanding people that, actually, sorry, I meant cooperation. Understanding people is social studies. Cooperation, we all know what cooperation is. But we also put our foreign language under here, although I think some of us have, I've been confused about that at times and thinking it had to do with understanding other cultures, and of course they all like this, right? It's a holistic system. Life is holistic. Learning is holistic at its best. So everything interlocks with everything else. But foreign language, cooperation, how to work in a group, how to have a sense of community, how to respect every individual, and wholeness, as I mentioned, the study of religion, art, music, and literature. So what is it that we do in Living Wisdom School to promote cooperation and personal development in children? We're going to, all the different teachers from the Portland School are going to share some things with you, and also Palo Alto School this morning in these areas, and hopefully we'll have time to get back to the other 4 areas which are more familiar to you. Any questions or thoughts so far? The curriculum we're talking about now is what leads to things that make our very best stories. I think a lot of you have heard my tower story about the child building a tower, but some of you may not, or you may have forgotten it. So let me tell you about the student we got who did not come to preschool and kindergarten here. He started first grade. And he was a little drama queen, we called him, because every single thing that happened was this dramatic response. You know, he didn't get to be first in line or behind the line leader, so second in line, and oh, it was just a horrible event. And at recess, nobody will play with me. You know what that usually means? Nobody will play what I want to play. And I don't want to give up what I want to play with everybody else. Constant emotional meltdowns. And I saw Karen and her co-teacher, I think it was Sonali at that time, constantly, patiently explaining to him, for example, you know, everybody doesn't have to play with you. You can go play with them and play what they want to. Or you could play that by yourself since you want to play it. You could be, your happiness doesn't depend on them. That may not be the words that they used. This constantly in the classroom, teaching him self-control when he didn't get what he wanted or things were. Pretty soon, his parents were saying to Karen, by Christmas time, how do you make him act like this? How do you make him behave? How can we do this at home? And the real, the most beautiful thing happened in the spring, and it was actually a preschool teacher who witnessed this happening. And she saw him playing outside the preschool room with the preschoolers' blocks, building a block tower. First of all, she noticed it because he was playing by himself happily. And he was a very social being. And so just the fact that he had gotten this skill, he did not have that when he came, of being capable of doing something on his own and being content. So she just noticed it, particularly because of that. Well, a few minutes later, she saw this 3-year-old barreling toward his block tower. He had just said, "Look, I'm all done." And she turned to look, and here goes this 3-year-old. Before she could grab the 3-year-old, this 3-year-old crashed it to the ground. And Trina, who couldn't be here today, said she ran over waiting for, because we all knew this child. He was a very social child, so we all knew him, waiting for, you know, the temper tantrum or the screams or the wails. And she said, as quickly as she did, she used her training, her conscious discipline training, and said, "Did you like that?" When she when she pushed her tower down? Well, no, I didn't like that. And then she calls the 3-year-old. He didn't like that. Next time you need to ask before you. And meanwhile, she turns back to comfort him, and he seems fine. And he sits down, and he builds the tower back again. And it takes a long time to build it back again. And he stands up when he's finished, and he says, "I'm finished. It's ready for somebody to knock down." Inviting the 3-year-olds, expanding his reality. Is that incredible? Yeah. I think it's incredible. And as adults, you think about, I don't know about you, but in my life, I'm all the time building up these towers of things I think have to be a certain way, or the flower bed that has to be this way, and why did she come along and do that to it, and more serious attachments of how I think things ought to be, and they don't. They always get torn down, don't they? We always get a chance to test our even-mindedness. We can be sure of that, and to see not only his even-mindedness in accepting that it happened, but then to include them in this, to say, "Wow, I know you like knocking it down. You can do that now." It was incredible. So how do we get kids to that point? A few years back, the Dalai Lama came to Seattle, and they had a huge event called Seeds of Compassion. It was really a huge event. Many high-tech and other kinds of industry and companies in Seattle donated a lot of money to help this event happen. And it had educators, psychologists, social workers come together for many panels and talks on how to teach compassion and to promote compassion. So it's just a wonderful thing to see a city come together for that. He spoke. It was really neat. One of the things they had on their website for Seeds of Compassion were lesson plans. And I thought, oh, goody. Let's see what those are. They had them for K through 2, 3 through 5, 9 through 12, something like that. Anyway, and I want to give appreciation and credit to the person who did this, because it took a lot of thought, and a lot of it is wonderful. And it's a great beginning, but it's only a beginning. So for grades K through 2, I brought 3 lessons today, and you can still find all this at Seeds of Compassion if you search that. What are the heroes of compassion? So the learning objectives are: describe the characteristics of one who shows compassion, understand what being a hero of compassion means, learn about the 14th Dalai Lama and recognize why he's recognized as a hero of compassion. So there are words to, you define hero and you understand hero. And then there are activities to learn about his life. And then there's a story to read and a lot of questions to answer about the story. Lesson 4, when is it a challenge to be compassionate? Well, this is better because it's getting us to our own personal experience. Recognize situations where it's difficult to be compassionate. Good. Understand that forgiveness is an important part of compassion. Then the activities are 3 different kind of role play scenes that could happen in the classroom, and how you could show compassion and how maybe not. So this is getting really good because it's talking about things the kids meet in their own everyday life and giving them a chance to think about different ways to react. But it's not actually calling on situations that actually happened in the classroom and then letting them reflect on them. Then lesson 5, how can you be your hero of compassion? Okay, great. Students will build on their understanding of compassionate behavior, identify ways they can become heroes of compassion, and this is a great one: recognize compassionate acts when they occur within their circle. So by the end, we're getting into actually demonstrating compassion and learning to recognize it. But even that requires a lot of skill, because what happens in the classroom when you recognize compassionate acts, if you haven't had experience doing it and you haven't had a teacher or a mentor or seen it being done, very easily you can notice that when you start rewarding compassionate acts, kids will start doing things while you're looking to get that reward. And that's not exactly, although that's better than not doing it, isn't it? But doing it to get a reward. But how can we make it more universal? Now, Erica was telling me a way that she makes these acts it makes it more universal when someone does something. Can you share that about the chart?
It's something that Barbara Raven in Palo Alto had developed, and it's
Would you
through all of
mind
our
standing?
classes, all of our classrooms. And there we have two charts. One is an I Practice Kindness chart, and one is an I Choose Happiness chart. And as we're going through the day, if a child notices that someone chose happiness when it was really challenging for them, or did some act of kindness, or if I notice it, we just, as we're going through, we'll just stop and say, oh, let's put a sticker on the chart. And we put a sticker on every single person's name, because if one of us can do it, then there's the possibility that we all can. And it also keeps it from becoming a competitive experience. I have more kindness stickers than you do. It defeats the purpose. So anyway, that's one way we do it.
Isn't that great? Because, and I've also heard it said by teachers who do that, who give the sticker to everybody. She put it that if one can do it, we all can do it. And another way I've heard is that because every act of kindness makes our whole classroom happier. And that's another way to put it. And instead of it being competitive, it's like we're all building this wonderful classroom together. In the upper grades here, we do class points. And class points, they might be for something academic, like everybody made 100 today on a spelling test. Not that we have many spelling tests, but something like that. You might say, wow, look at this, and give a class point. But we try to make them more of like, gosh, today, say we've been having problems on the playground. There have been some arguments and bad sportsmanship, and we've talked about how to handle that. And then you come in from lunch and everybody's just gotten along fine. And then one of the rules is when the kids ask for a point, they don't get it. When somebody else says, oh, Teacher Melissa, I saw so-and-so doing this kind thing for somebody else, then you might be able to do the class point if somebody else points it out, unless you have a sneaking suspicion they ask someone else to tell you. That doesn't really happen more till the older kids. So, but anyway, we give a class point. For example, I've noticed it I'm teaching communication to the 3rd through 5th grade, and we almost always start with a proofread. And they do it in their writing journal. And so one day I turned around from writing the proofread sentence on the board, and almost everybody in the class had their notebook out, had it open, and they were ready. You know that's astounding, right? I mean, some of you who maybe haven't stood in front of a classroom don't know that. You think, well, of course, but no, it usually takes a long time. Where is it? Which notebook? I can't find my, They were ready. So I wanted them to know how I had noticed this, that it was incredible. I wanted, one of the axioms of conscious discipline is what you pay attention to, you get more of. It's another way of saying we want to build on strengths. You recognize the strengths, you give feedback for strengths, and that spreads over into everything else the child does. What you pay attention to, you get more of. So if I said nothing except to the two who didn't have their notebooks, why don't you get your notebook out and be ready next time? That wouldn't be nearly as good as saying, wow, look at this. Everybody's ready. I can't believe it. I said this and I meant it. It's like a college classroom. And I turned around and gave them a class point. When they get 100 class points, they get to have a party of their choice, which means they get to decide. They've already had 100. And they're going to, when Sonali gets back from India, they're going to have a sleepover. That was their choice. So that's a way that everybody gets the reward, even though not everybody had the notebook out. So in that way, we promote cooperation as well as this being alert and being part of community and ready to go on together. And you're all going to get one of these. It's called Creating an Education for Life Classroom, and there are 2 parts of it. One is supporting there are 2 parts. One is personal development, and one is cooperation. And it's just a list of gobs and gobs of activities, and also references to things from my book and to Nitai Duranja's books of activities in there that you can do that promote and teach these qualities. So, under personal development, I believe it is, one of the goals is promoting children's highest aspirations, promoting their high-mindedness. Remember, there's a whole chapter in Calm and Compassionate Children on high-mindedness, that it's spiritual, but it's not religious or sectarian. It's that inspires us, that brings us to a calm and compassionate place. And so some of the activities that are under that are Wish Tunnel, which we're going to actually do this afternoon, which I think is something Helen told us about, but Lorna's going to lead us in it this afternoon. Personal affirmation, prayers, stories, music, and silence. So let's actually do one right now, led by Helen, that promotes this, not by telling children you ought to have high aspirations and only think about positive things. No. It promotes connectedness with all of life, and that way it bleeds over into the cooperation area too. And this is a prayer that she does with her children, so she's going to lead us all in doing it.
I bow to Mother Nature.
I bow to Mother Nature.
I lift to Father Sky.
I lift to Father Sky.
I open to the sun
I open to the sun
and the clouds going by.
and the clouds going by.
I welcome the rain
I welcome the rain
that flows to the sea.
that flows to the sea.
I honor the kindness in all of you and me.
I honor the kindness in all of you and me. And let's just take a moment of silence to feel that. Sit down. How many of you have seen Soraya, who is a student in Helen's class, doing that on YouTube? Have some of you seen that? Yeah. I can send you the link if you'd like it. So I know this really affects the kids because you see this video and you could see it does. I mean, she says, Mom, do you want to see, her mother told me, Mom, do you want to see my poses? And her mom said, poses? And there are some, she did do some yoga poses afterwards, but her mom said, what? And she started to do this prayer. Her mom said, wait. And ran and got the video camera and said, okay, now do it. And this 4-year-old goes through the whole thing in the living room with her baby brother screaming in the kitchen, but she stays right there focused. And you can see and feel that she's feeling the sentiments behind it. Which is just a matter of getting the child in touch with their body. And you know how when you're really excited, you can just be so out there that, and I know you've seen kids do this, they're knocking things down and running into things, and they need to just come back to their center is the only way I know how to say it. And Trina has this one where she has them just touch different parts of their body. And if at the 3-year-old level, that's challenging when you're excited. So she does this every time before they cross the street, for example. So she'll say, touch your hair. And she waits for everybody to touch their hair. And then touch your shoulders. Okay, touch your waist. And you'll see 1 or 2 still aren't doing it. And so you might even have to go over and assist them. I really appreciate that you guys just do it with me. What a great class. 1 point toward the party. Don't even have to ask you to participate. But see, that's a little more advanced because you have to really, you can't be thinking about your anxiety, your worry, what you're excited about. If you're trying to, remember to inhale, touch your tongue. What happens is you bring your consciousness and your attention back to being grounded in yourself. And it's just a more advanced one than touch different body parts. So how about sharing what you've seen your child do at home that he got in school, that we don't know how he got it, but he brought this home to calm down. Yeah, you come up so that we can have you.
Okay. My son's been here, this is his 4th year here, so he's currently in Melissa's class in 2nd grade. And he's got an older brother at home, and like siblings do, they get into it. with each other, and I noticed he picked up a certain, I would say, coping mechanism this year. And so we've been watching it. I mean, he'll get real upset and he'll go in his room, and then he'll come out and he'll be more calm. And he was doing this, really taking care of himself, being able to remove himself from the heat of the moment and calm himself down. So one day I kind of peeked on him. Now, what's he doing there? Is he reading books? Is he playing? And he was tracing in his hand. And over and over and over again, he traced and he traced. And I said, what are you doing? And he said, I'm tracing a star. And I said, huh. And he said, and he was showing me what he was doing. I trace a star and I think of light, and it helps me calm down. And he also traces an S in his hand, which after hearing Melissa, I know where that came from. For him, he associated the word silence and stillness with it. So he says, I trace an S and I say to myself, silence, stillness. And he says, that doesn't work, then I do star. And I think of light, and he'll do it over and over. And sometimes, I mean, he's doing it over and over again. So he's doing it, his attention is going toward his hand. He's lighter when he comes out, and it calms him down. And in fact, the other day, we had an incident. He said, I said, well, why didn't you, where he got upset and it went a little too far. And I said, well, what about your techniques? He said, sometimes I'm too upset to do those. But he recognized that, it was past that level. So maybe before you get to that level, you can do that. But anyway, so I asked him where he got it, and he said, it's school. So.
And we love to hear that, don't we?
Just imagine if you had learned coping mechanisms like that when you were in school, and learned how to experience your feelings, not repress them and deny them, but then transform them, or transform yourself into letting them go. Isn't that totally amazing? I think.
So another way to calm down, of course, is breathing. And I asked Erica again if she would share what she'd shared in some homework that she had given in the online teacher training about breathing in her class.
We have, one of the things that we really work with the children on a lot is just breathing and doing deep diaphragmatic breathing or belly breathing. And I was on lunch duty out on the playground, and one of the children got hit in the face with a ball and went down. And he was crying. He was sort of borderline hyperventilating. And I watched one of the other boys, who I think is in 3rd grade this year. He saw what happened, and he went over. There was a big circle around this other child, and he got down on the ground with the hurt child, and he said, "Now you're fine. There's no blood. We just need to breathe." Wow. And, he said, "Now you need to look at me." So they made eye contact. He said, "Now just breathe in and breathe out." And they went back and forth like this for a little while, and I watched this child within a matter of a minute or two just completely stop crying, kind of brush himself off, and then they got up and went to play. And I just watched, from a few feet away. I'd never had to intervene. They worked through it all on their own.
Now, just so everybody knows, that doesn't happen every day at a Living Wisdom School. That is totally remarkable.
The same child actually did something similar the other day. Again, it's just a tool that he's really taken into himself, and he was helping another smaller child again.
But it works, and when kids can learn these things at a young age, and it doesn't have to be, it can be, that just shows that a large part of the learning, the curriculum, this is curriculum, happens during lunch and recess. That's one of the times the kids are most challenged to learn cooperation, because they're not a lot of times most of the time it's not a directed activity. So boy, that is a real opportunity. Moving on to cooperation is, how do we deal with all the little upsets and things that happen at recess? How do we teach that everyone's part of the community, that we don't hurt others' feelings? And one of those ways is everybody gets to play. And Lorna's going to talk to us about that.
Everybody gets to play is a big one. It's a big challenge for all of the kids, because here in the smaller school environment, you have all the different ages of kids together, and everybody wants to play different things, and you have all those tools of maturity mixing on the playground there. And so one day we had a group of kids playing unicorns. It was a big deal in our girl faction there for a while. And they were out playing unicorns and running and had this whole scenario going about their unicorn fantasy and the whole world of the unicorns. And another child came along, and I was standing back and just keeping an eye on things, and suddenly there was quite this disruption about, no, you can't, yes, I can, no, it's not fair. And she came over and said, they won't let me play. And I said, no, of course they'll let you play. If you want to, they're playing unicorns. You want to play unicorns? And then the other kids came over and were saying, no, but she can't. And the whole deal was that, of course, this new one that came in, she had a whole different idea about how to play unicorns. Her idea about how to play unicorns was completely different. And they were saying, no, you can't do it that way. And so rather than trying to get them all to come together, I knew that there was going to be no way that they were all going to agree on how to do this. So I just said, that's okay. This is what happens, Sometimes there's unicorns from other places that come and visit. So why don't you be a unicorn? Usha, you be a unicorn from another island. You're from another island and you do things differently. And you flew way over here to see these other unicorns and you discover that they don't do things the same way you do. And so now you can meet and you can discover each other. And she took this. It took her a minute or two to sort of think about this and said, yeah, and I think she came up with the name of her island where she came from. And then the other kids went, yeah, and we do it this way. And we don't eat other animals or something that was different. And the other girl said, well, I don't want to do it. And I said, no, but then you're visiting, and now you have to tell them how you do things here. And you can, and then they had to find out where to live, because they all had their little unicorn nest, where to live. So I said, and now you have to find your place where to live, and then you can invite these unicorns over to visit you and show them.
So this is a big one. How many of you have seen this at recess where kids, it's usually a girl thing, where something starts and somebody else wants to play and it's no, you can't play. Sometimes it can be a boy thing too, but, and any questions about handling that, or do you want to hear any more about that, or should we go on? About how Helen and Karen and Melissa and Lorna.
I would love to hear more about
Would you like to hear more?
I would.
Can anybody think of something?
Well, one of the things that I've noticed often is that they just can't figure out how to do it. They have their idea about what they're doing. And sometimes there's an exclusion factor of this child. They don't want this particular child in there. But more often than not, it's because they have a vision of how this is supposed to go. And this other child is coming in and isn't fitting into their vision, wants to do it differently. And so usually what I wind up doing is trying to help them see and figure out ways where they can still do it. They can still play what they want to play, and yet they can still include and include other people in the way that they want to do it too. And so it takes my particular technique is just throwing out suggestions, like I did for the unicorn one. Well, what if that happened? Or what if that happened? And see what they pick up on. If you, with boys, it's often the physical thing. It's they're playing ball or they're playing basketball. They're doing some game, and somebody comes in, and that child doesn't have the skills they think, or wants to do it differently, or has their own idea. And so I've found that instead of saying this is the way we're going to fix it, which is my tendency sometimes, is to throw out suggestions and say, well, what if what if you added one more team, or what if you put one more person behind the goal line, or what if we didn't do it that way? Would it be possible that somebody else could take on this other role over here? And just until they pick up and they think, oh, well, maybe that might work. And it doesn't threaten their idea of how it's supposed to go. And then also they get a feeling that that's their idea. You've thrown it out there, but then they pick it up and they think they've solved it and that they've figured it out. So I found that helps a lot, especially in the bigger group situations.
With the older kids, sometimes, again, in the physical sports, they can get frustrated with kids who aren't as good at it, or kids who, want to, they perceive it as interrupt the game because they want to be in it. And so we just work with problem solving. If that consistently is happening at recess and they're consistently excluding people, then we talk about, well, what are some solutions so that no one feels bad, but you get your needs met. And usually what that has been is, Yeah, usually what that has been, I don't know, that what we do is overlap the recesses so that everybody's not out there at the same time, so that the older kids know they're going to get their time to play wall ball or whatever it is intensely and challenge themselves in a way that would hurt the younger kids. So their needs getting met, but the little kids get to play when they're all out there together. So it's partly just modeling that attitude of it's essential that no one gets excluded and no one's feelings get hurt. And sometimes that might be saying, okay, this is just a game for the older kids, or maybe we move the game to the parking lot, and the teachers of the primary tell their kids they can't go to the parking lot today. It's just for the older kids. But it's working out solutions and modeling with them how important it is that we find a solution that works for everybody. Any more on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, a question about what to do about play that is like warring factions, because it's an interesting dynamic that keeps happening again and again with our children, specifically my class of the 2 fourth graders and the 6th grader and the 1st and 2nd that play together at recess, that almost always and inevitably turns into some kind of thing where someone's chasing someone, where there's sticks that turn into swords or guns or something, and this person's out to get that person, and they've built their fort, and this whole little warring things that go on.
One time I went on a field trip with one of our teachers who was 4th and 6th grade field trip. And it was a class, they've been together a long time, so they get kind of be like siblings, with small classes, 10 and 12 people that are together a long time. They know each other well, and they're like brothers and sisters. So they love each other, but they fight like brothers and sisters. So on this field trip, we were staying at this state park, and we had one cabin for the girls and one for the boys. And we heard all this screaming going on, and so chaperones and I, going to check what was happening, discovered that the boys had sneaked over to the girls' cabin and stolen all their shoes. So when the girls got up and came outside to go play, no shoes. So that was funny, and then the girls, because they gave them right back and everybody laughed, and then the girls, of course, tried to do something back to the boys, and pretty soon, within 6 hours that evening, it was escalating, and people were really getting mad because their shoes were being hidden. They couldn't find their shoes. It was obvious that this was not working. Well, you know what? One thing we tend to do, and it's appropriate sometimes to say, absolutely not, this is stopping right now. But what's even better is when we can change the energy. Remember that it's not so much that you explain things as you give kids the experience of an energy change. And I just thought this teacher was brilliant, because she talked to the dad of one of the boys who was on the trip and said, okay, they're wanting to interact with the girls as boys. They're wanting to they want to do something sneaky. Let's do something positive sneaky. So how about if you go to Safeway over in Redmond, and when you're out there getting groceries for tomorrow or whatever, how about you buy roses for all the girls, and the boys have to sneak to their pillows tonight while the girls aren't looking and leave one on every girl's pillow. Well, it's a little sexist in a way, but let me tell you, when those girls went up to their beds and found roses and finally found out how that had happened, that the boys had sneaked up there. And to see the boys, it was still a challenge. They were sneaking. They were getting something over on them, trying to do something they didn't know about. So it was taking that energy that they wanted, but bringing it up to a higher level. This requires so much creativity on the part of the teacher, but when you can do it, oh my gosh, the whole energy changed. And then the girls were trying to find things they could surprise the boys that were positive. So it's like, how can you take that energy, this desire they have to relate to each other, and do something positive? Something else that we do here to try to keep positive relationships between the older and the younger is the older kids do surprise things for the kindergarten. Now those two classes are in the same building, as you noticed, for the DVD. And by the way, this DVD is being made for the online classes. people in other places who can't come and take these classes can then see it. We post it on. So for them, for the online people, we have 2 buildings here at Portland Living Wisdom School, and the office, the intermediate class, which is the older kids, and the kindergarten are all in one building. So there's some overlapping and meeting in the hall when you're going to the bathroom and meeting outside. And so one of the ways to help promote a relationship and a positive relationship between the two is to have the older kids do surprises for the younger kids. So sometimes it's been Valentine's Day. This year it was at Christmas time. They actually went over to a teacher's home. And Sean was there that day helping, weren't you? When you made cookies. And the class made cookies together to surprise the kindergartners. So it wasn't only making cookies, they made a label for each child, and so I think it was Sean telling me that some of them were so getting into decorating the label and writing the child's name on it, the ones who love that artistic stuff. The doers were in there, stirring the dough and all that, and all these different things. Was there something else they were doing?
No, playing and
Playing.
when they got their chance.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they're all focused like adults, right? But the fact was, then they came back and they had a little bag of cookies and a beautiful name tag for each child, and their challenge is to sneak in the kindergarten while they're out at recess and leave them in there, and it said, "Merry Christmas from the elves." And the coolest thing is the kindergartners practically never know who it is. So the experience of doing something positive, and it just changes, because that's the whole premise of Education for Life, is you give them experiences, and then hopefully you have them reflect on it and look back on it, and they learn something from it. Because then the teacher would talk about, well, how did it feel to give them something? Do you mind that they don't know that you did it and they didn't thank you? And the kids all realized, no, it was really fun. It was fun to surprise them. Yes, Mia.
I just wanted to share something that I kind of was inspired by a few of my co-teachers in that same area, because I was in a kindergarten classroom last year, and the boys and some of the girls sometimes too are very explorative, especially in the spring with energy. And one teacher was just like, well, look at animals when they're young. I mean, they're always butting heads. They're always finding ways to battle. And another teacher would really just channel it through putting emphasis on the warrior and what's the strength of the warrior and how can we explore that and give children opportunities to explore the positive side of the warrior.
Yeah, we've done that too in having them, instead of battling each other, okay, let's battle the dark forces that are coming. How can you protect the little kids? Because you can't just suppress that energy.
Yeah.
It's how can we draw it to a higher level? I think I talk about that somewhere in Calm and Compassionate Children too.
Not that I've been that successful. I mean, it's very challenging.
It's challenging, it's directional.
It is.
In the area of cooperation, and one of the skills of cooperation is recognizing each individual's unique contribution and right to be part of the community. And one way we do that is through celebrating birthdays. So you probably all have your own way of celebrating kids' birthdays at your schools, yes or no? Or what do you do, Kathleen?
I actually took Karen's idea when I was here years ago of making birthday books.
Oh, good. Okay, so Karen, will you share birthday books with us, please?
And I forgot to bring down the other thing, the little poster one. But, oh well. Okay, so what we do in our classroom is we make birthday books. We actually have a little routine for birthdays, and we start at circle time. We'll have we have a special birthday candle, and the birthday person can choose to light the candle themselves or have someone else light it. And we sing happy birthday, we turn out the lights, which, we saw light coming in through the windows, but it's all part of the thing. And then we do a special little blessing for them afterwards, and they get a birthday sticker and so forth as well. But then we all get together and we brainstorm ideas about things that this child is particularly good at, or things that we especially appreciate about them. And then every student gets a piece of paper and they write down a few of these things. Birthday wishes for the birthday person, and something that they're especially good at, or something that they're especially appreciated for. And then make a colorful picture. So we did one of these sweet because when they're brainstorming, they'll think of things that they like about the person, but sometimes they're things that I would never have chosen. You know, they'll say, "Oh, this person is very good at reading," for instance, and I'm thinking they are, but that's their perception, and the person whose birthday it is, who's being spoken about, is always so pleased. So here's an example, and I just love what kids come up with. Sometimes they'll just take the words that are on the board. You know, maybe it's like kind or helpful or good at drawing, and they'll just, a lot of them are, you are kind, you are helpful. And we encourage them, if they can, to add on to that and give examples. In what way? But some kids just totally come up with their own thing, and I love this one. It says, "Happy birthday, you brighten my heart, you shine right above me." And then in her picture, she's drawn, 7 candles on the birthday cake. And
Is there a name on it too, about it?
yeah, but since we're recording it, I thought I wouldn't mention that. And of course, they sign their name. Because there's first and second grade, and that encompasses huge range of capability. Here's somebody else's writing. You can see there's a good deal more involved there. You are a fun-loving friend. You have an enormous heart, great imagination, so forth and so on. And then the picture on the reverse side, much more sophisticated. And then we have the simpler version, you are awesome. But it's just very sweet. And these really helps them think about another person and their good qualities and just express that and share. Another thing that happens in the older class, and I'm sorry I forgot to bring my example of this down, but what they usually do is they'll have a piece of paper and they'll have a picture of the person on it, and they'll brainstorm just qualities, and they're beautifully written all around the edge, and then oftentimes there's little decorations and so forth added to the corners and so forth, just for people to get
is the ideas. And this is not to say, well, here's your personal development cooperation curriculum. Of course, you've got to see what your kids need and do what your kids need. And also, whatever happens in the classroom, you respond to that. But these are some great ideas that the teachers here use that have just been wonderful. And then I'm going to give you a copy of the primary progress report card, which shows how the different activities of the class are broken down into 6 curriculum areas. And did you read about this? I forgot to show you all this when we were talking about stickers for showing compassion or kindness or something like that. But this is something similar, and this is something that Narani, Toby Morehouse, who is one of the senior teachers at Living Wisdom School in Nevada City, California. And back when I taught with her, which had to be earlier than '96, she had the kids go on a field trip. Do you see the names on here?
Yeah, it's just like a...
And she said that morning they left, they were bickering, they were complaining about everything, who got to ride where, which is a common one. Let me just tell you, if you go on a field trip, have a seat signed. If you assign the seats, you just get rid of a lot of problems right off the bat. Anyway, so she finally was so exasperated, she ran in, and this is just the creativity of teachers is so amazing. I never would have thought of this. She got some poster paper and she sat in the car while a parent was driving and made up this thing with the heart and the rainbow, I choose happiness. And she explained to the kids that every time on the trip that something didn't go the way you wanted or you didn't get what you wanted, if you chose to be cheerful anyway, you came up and you got to put a little mark by your name. And she said it just totally changed the energy of the trip with these kids. So I stuck this in my bag of EFL, Education for Life tricks. I've pulled it out a couple of times, and this morning when I pulled it out, or yesterday when I pulled it out, I noticed that it was when Erica was in her class. Erica's name is one of the names on here. So that's fun. Just that creativity of coming up with opportunities for the kids to practice the skills that we're talking about, rather than, you don't want to just tell them about them. Like those lessons I read you on compassion with heroes of compassion. Well, that's good to talk about. It does bring it into our consciousness, but more importantly is talking about how do we show compassion to the kid who's being left out on the playground? How do we show compassion to someone whose mom's in the hospital and that sort of thing.
So let's move along now to the more academic areas of the curriculum. I left some handouts on everybody's chair. And one of them is, well, actually, these are come from every part of the curriculum.
One of them is a lesson from the curriculum that Karen has completed this fall that she started writing down last summer. Karen has multiple wonderful thematic units that she teaches. Oceans, dinosaurs, fairies and friends, festivals of light, and bears. So our first actually produced for sale Education for Life academic curriculum is right here. We're selling this for $10. It's got, those of you who take the online training, you did get it online. It's got 7 lessons, but it's a unit that it can take about a month to complete because the lessons, some of them go for more than one day. And this is lesson 3 that you're getting here, which gives a wonderful illustrations of teaching intellectual skills, like how big are bears, through experience and through the feelings. And we'll come back to that. Then you got another lesson plan on, this one was turned in by a student in the online teacher training last year. Did you get, is this on your desk, chair? And it's a cooperation one. Because in the class, those of you who are taking the class, and I think there's 3 of you who are taking the class here, you have to do 2 lesson plans for the final class. And one can be any academics area, or maybe you don't think, if you don't think of music as academic or PE, it could be any of those subjects. But then also there has to be one under the cooperation or personal development. And this is one turned in by last year by a student on teaching cooperation, an activity that gives kids a chance to experience cooperating. And we're actually going to do this activity after lunch. Then the third handout I left on your desk was a list of the skills for living. And again, this is part of our curriculum. All the schools have these, and we keep them in mind as goals. It's a big list, isn't it? It'd be great if each of us had all of these, much less the kids. But it is something that we keep in mind. These are the directions, and recognizing these in children. All of you know that we have an awards night in which a child gets recognized for some quality, character trait that they have shown. You don't have this. This is a curriculum produced from scratch. Well, now wherever you are, you're going to decide what do your kids need to learn. Another thing that enters into the curriculum is what are you good at? Of course, what do you love? What are you enthusiastic about? Because you teach that the best. In fact, I think it says in Education for Life that the teacher should love the subject they teach, or in the case of younger children, love childhood itself. And without one of those loves, how can you really convey to the kids that enthusiasm and excitement of learning? So people will say to me, well, tell me about the yoga. Does every class have yoga in Living Wisdom School? And I said, well, it depends on the teacher. If the teacher does yoga and loves yoga, yes, they do. But mandating that a teacher teach yoga, it's not going to be something that the kids will light their fire. Now, there's some subjects we do, of course, every teacher does have to teach. But even that, maybe not. Maybe we can find another, if they're fabulous in everything but math, we'll go find a math teacher to get that teacher to teach, right? But this is examples of academic resources that fit in, or that have really great ideas that fit into the Education for Life philosophy. And just to give you one example today, it was Rose that introduced me to these. Are you all familiar with these, some of you? No. These are so exciting. I'm excited because I just learned about them. this series right here is all science written by Dan Green, but it's created by someone whose last name is Simon. I think it's Simon Basher. Biology, life as we know it, rocks and minerals, astronomy, physics. There's one on the periodic table. They started out being in the sciences. They're so popular that now they're expanding, and they have one on punctuation, which I can't wait to get out of the library, but we do have a poster of it on the board that you can look at. There's one coming out this summer on grammar. I can't wait for that one. But what's so wonderful is they take these totally intellectual subjects and give it a feeling element. For the feeling years, is this wonderful or what? These are the different, let's see, I should have marked a place where one would be. Okay, so here's obsidian. So obsidian is a stunning volcanic glass important to Native Americans. It's sharper than steel. And then there's a whole description of it written by this character. So it's in the first person, so the child has somebody to identify with. Black as night and dangerous to know. I'm a sharp, pointy individual. My frosted glass surface gives away nothing about my makeup. You can tell by the way I fracture that I have no internal crystal arrangement.
Yes. Just to share how I used them recently, we did a human body unit, and I was just coming in one morning a week and doing supplementary activities and learning with the kids. And we used the biology, and after kind of the more quiet, inward sacred, more sacred time, I would read it like you would read a story in circle, but the different body parts that they had just learned to reinforce what they learned, and they loved it. They asked for it every day. Can we read it again? Can we read it again? And it really, what I noticed, it just reinforced what they had already learned in such a fun way. And they loved the pictures of the lungs. That was their favorite.
So, why is this so effective and so great? We know, because you're Education for Life experts, you know it's because it's bringing the feelings into a subject, and the feeling years makes it alive for the kids. Oh, I was going to tell you that I just started teaching communication to the third, fourth, fifth grade in January, second term. And we started out with biographies because I knew they hadn't done any biographies, and so they all got, I actually went to the library and picked out people like Rachel Carson for the scientific kid, and Beatrix Potter for the artistic kid, different ones of people I thought they would be interested in. And it was fine. They read them, they did reports, it was fine. But I was thinking about, okay, what do I want to do next with this group? And I said to them something about the primary classes theme. And I said, what's that theme they're doing? Trying to think of what the term was that she was using. And one of the kids said, mythical beasts? And another kid said, like griffins and dragons. And I mean, I'm exaggerating, but I could feel their little hearts and minds going over to the primary classroom. And I'm thinking, oh, these kids' hearts really need a little bit more fantasy, more fanciful things than this cut and dried reality here. I said, because I read a lot of kids' books and I knew a lot of dragon books existed, I said, well, do you guys want to do dragon books next? I mean, the room erupted, yes, yes, yes. So we have been reading dragon books. I mean, I'm teaching them reading, writing, and grammar, but we're doing it in the context of reading books that have dragons as characters. And I've learned so much. I didn't know there were all these different kinds of dragons. There's this whole mythology that's been created about. I only knew about dragons that were fire-breathing that you tried to go out and kill, or the more contemporary literature dragons who are usually friends of mankind helping fight evil, which of course that's what the kids all wrote their stories about, mainly because I required it to be either that kind of dragon or a fairy dragon. And it has just been unbelievable. And they will read a book that's 5 grade levels ahead of them in reading level for a little while because they're just so motivated. It's just been so wonderful. And this, I want to draw your attention to the statement from Education for Life. There's much to be gained from learning to approach any new subject, as it were, from within, from its core rather than its periphery. And one way to accomplish this feat is for the student to be involved totally in whatever subject he or she is given to study. Indeed, it's partly in the rigid compartmentalization of subjects that formal education loses so much of its potential relevance. So the thematic approach, which is known throughout the field of education, again, if you've ever done it, you'll see how this applies in the classroom. The kids, it's so much better to go into one subject deeply, whether it's a scientific subject like the human body or rocks and minerals, and then put that aside for a month and go into whatever the next subject, which maybe we're going to hear about bears in a minute. So the kids, they're just like consumed by that subject because it's so motivating, and that's how real life learning is. Think of a skill or a subject you've learned as an adult. Like for some of you it might be astrology or flower essences or speaking another language or playing a musical instrument or something you've learned to do. Might be education for life. And think about in your study of that and your learning of that, I bet 9 out of 10 of you were doing it because you had a use for it. And that was what made it motivating to you, right? And even though everything a kid learns, they're not going to have a use for it tomorrow, we could substitute that usefulness with a subject they love. And I shouldn't go into it too much because Narani and those of you who watched the video on lesson planning have heard her talk about this at length. So now I'm going to let Karen share a little bit with you on just the bear lesson, number 3 from the Bears in Fact and Fiction curriculum.
So don't look at it. Don't look at it. Because, well, I mean, it wouldn't be the end of the world. I'm going to start out by giving you a little sticky note, and I want you to write your name on this. So if you'll just write your name and pass, or grab one off, and then pass on the pad, and everybody write their name on a sticky note. And for this exercise, it will be helpful if you pretend that you're about 6 or 7 years old. You're about, 3.5 to 4 feet tall. And we're going to think, how big is a real bear? And so, does anybody have an idea how big a real bear is? Okay. Anybody else? How big is a real bear?
2 or 3 of me.
Does it mean standing up on 2 legs or on 4?
You get to decide which way are you thinking about, a bear on its 4 feet or a bear on its 2 feet?
Way bigger than my dad.
All right, so what you get to do right now, if you're thinking of a bear standing on its 4 feet, I want you to go over and put the top of your sticker on this bit of wall right here where you think the top of its shoulders would be. And if you're thinking of a bear standing up on 2 feet, I want you to come right over here and put where you think the top of its head is going to be. So go ahead and stand up and go to one place or the other. Put your sticker on the wall.
Usha, help. I need it. There we go.
Yeah.
Here?
Yeah, that's fine.
Peter, I can't reach. We have chairs. Well, we have tall people.
You can hand it to Sean and let him
Do you
reach.
see how tall I put mine?
Okay, Sean, I want my mic this way.
I want my big coming.
And as soon as you've done that, if you come back to your seat. All right, boy, what cooperative students. Everybody got it up there and nobody got hurt. And everybody's back in their seat quietly waiting to see what's next. Good work. Last point. All right, so I'm going to read you a story about Alaska's 3 bears, because as it turns out, not all bears are the same size. For one thing, of course, some are little bears, Some are baby bears and some are grown-up bears. But really, in my question, I didn't say this, but I was thinking of a grown-up bear, and I think most of you were too. What you'll learn in this book that I'm going to pretend to read is that there are 3 kinds of bears that live in North America. The black bear, the brown bear or grizzly bear, and the polar bear. We're going to count off coming across the rows, and then I'm going to tell you what to do next. Lori, would you start with 1?
1.
And remember your number. Use your fingers if you need to.
3, 1,
2,
3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2.
Bob is 3. All right. Now, everybody who didn't said number 1, you're going to listen in this book for how big a black bear is. If you're a number 2, you're going to listen and try to remember the brown bear or grizzly bear. 2 names for the same kind of bear. If you're number 3, polar bear. Okay? So I'm reading the book. And in the course of the book, we're going to find out that the black bear standing is approximately 5.5 feet tall. The brown bear is approximately 7 feet tall. And the polar bear is approximately 9 feet tall. That's an average height. You know, there's certainly taller ones and there's certainly shorter ones. Everybody stand up now for a moment and look around the room. We're all 6 or 7 years old. Are we all exactly the same height?
no.
No. Same thing with bears. Even if we were all black bears, they would be just like this. Some would be shorter, some would be taller, some would be right in the middle. Go ahead and sit down. All right. Now, I'm going to have, oops, I didn't really quite bring enough equipment. All the people who are number 1s, would you please come stand right up here? And I'm going to give you this ruler, and I'm going to have you find the place on the wall that's 5.5 feet from the floor. You get to work as a team, and let's see. Good, thank you. When you find where that place is, if you'll put this piece of tape on the wall just at that point. So 5.5 feet up. All the number 2s.
Maybe wait, that's enough.
Okay, great, okay. You can all come sit down, you don't have to really do it.
We don't have to really do it. Sorry, guys. Sorry, Sean.
But what I really meant was have that group demonstrate. We don't all have to do it.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Sorry, you guys go ahead and do it. Or would you rather have a yardstick? You get a choice of tools, except for the yardstick. Hiding back here, would you grab it? If it's helpful, if it's helpful, there's
That's a
a
very good way.
yardstick that measures 3 feet at one time. Woo-hoo! All right. Thank you very much. So in Education for Life terms, in flow learning terms, what we would have just done if we really completed that part of the activity is we would have done Awaken Enthusiasm. That was the part where you got your sticker, you got to get up and stick it to the wall, think about how big a real bear is. And then Focus Attention part would be the part where I was reading you the book and you had to listen. It's a book I was going to read you, Alaska's Three Bears, is a little bit of a longish story, and the information on the size of the bears is near the beginning, so you need to remember all the way through. And at the end, I would ask people to let me know, and we would check it for accuracy. But that would be the focus attention part. And then the direct experience is actually measuring and seeing how tall the bears really are. And then for sharing inspiration, what we would do is create a graph using either, in the curriculum book, it has these little icons. You could either do it compared to the average size 7-year-old, which is 4 feet. An icon would represent 4 feet, so you'd have a black bear, a brown bear, a polar bear on your graph, or you could use the little feet symbols to show.
So Karen, can you speak to these 6 areas? Which is this?
This would fall Under several. A part of it would be our Earth, our universe, because it's actual information about bears, which are part of the natural world. Obviously, cooperation is involved, working together as a team. Communication, when you're talking with each other and so forth. So those would be the main areas that it would fall under in this particular lesson. Okay?
I wanted her to show that just to show how experiential it could be. Not that every lesson you have will be that experiential, right? Because it's a lot of moving around in the classroom, and you know that can take a lot of time. So one of the things I want to come back to is the whole idea of the thematic learning and the fact that modern education is very reductionist. That is, all the skills that children are expected to know, it's just been reduced into little discrete, specific skills, and they're tested every 2 years to see if they have this skill and that skill and this math skill and that math skill and this library skill, and it's deadly boring when it's done like that. Whereas if you teach holistically, the kids do get these skills. And how do we know that? Because our kids do test, at least in our school, we know two grade levels higher than average on standardized tests by the time they get to 4th or 5th grade. Now, we don't test earlier, and I know that if we did test earlier, I don't believe it would be that high because the individual rates of development vary so much, and we don't push kids hard like they do in kindergarten and 1st grade in some schools, because we know that if we're patient and positive and surround them with a literature-rich and subject-rich classroom, all the kids do get it. They do, unless there's a specific maybe learning disability or problem. I don't want to say there's never a child who has difficulty academically later on, sometimes, but just this holistic approach really does work. Before we leave that topic, I just wanted to say one more thing, which is a lot of times our teaching tends to be, or the way we were taught maybe, tended to be the teacher tells us something, we memorize it, and then they ask, what did you learn? And we tell back. And I know I fall into that a lot as a teacher. One reason is some kids love it, particularly the intellectual kids and the will kids. They love to be challenged that way. Feeling kids, not so much. Physical kids, not a bit. So we have to be careful that we are teaching upper level skills like, problem solving, like how do you use this information. And that's, again, brings us back to the thematic approach. Really helps do that because at the end of almost every unit, the kids produce something, whether it's a report or a poster or a talk or a project that they share with parents. They actually use what they've learned and produce something. Do you have something to add? You look so intelligent back there. So I just wanted to mention, because some people who take the Education for Life teacher training haven't had teacher training elsewhere. And I wouldn't want you not to have at least heard of this, because you need to be sure you structure your lessons so that the kids have the opportunity for the higher level skills, which are the most interesting. So it's called Bloom's taxonomy, and taxonomy means it's a hierarchy of skills, and the most basic one is, of course, recall or remembering, and that's what we tend to, when was the Declaration of Independence signed, class? And you repeat to me the date, okay? Or if I were asking you something that was related to what you've been studying, I might ask, name the 4 steps of flow learning. Who can do that? Karen, I know you can. Thank you for your willingness. Can anybody else name the steps of flow learning?
Awaken enthusiasm, focus attention, direct experience, and reflection.
Share inspiration. Okay, she did that. Does that show she can name the 4? Does it mean that she can teach a lesson using the 4? We don't know. So the next level is evaluation. So here's a question that I might ask about EFL that would be evaluative. Do you or disagree with the curriculum areas Karen has assigned to Lesson 3 in the BEAR curriculum? Why or why not? So evaluate this information, showing you understand it. The next is analyze. And I had a handout, which I cannot find, but I'll email it to you. And the analyze question was, arrange topics on the handout into 3 groups according to the stage of maturity in which they belong. So what I did was I listed subjects like walking a balance beam, studying pollution, and studying bears. And I said, okay, which stage of development would each one best go in? Physical years, feeling years, or will years? And I bet you all could answer that, right? You think about physical years, which one of those lessons would be appropriate? Right, balance beam. Feeling years, bears, and of course the will years, they want to change the world. And this is wonderful. So let's study pollution then when we can do something about it and use our wills. And let's don't give that to the feeling. I just don't like all this emphasis on pollution and extinct species for the feeling years, because they don't need to hurt. They already are so open and there's so much hurt in the world that they're exposed to. They need to be fed with inspiration. And it'll be pretty quickly, they'll be 12 years old and they won't be open to that anymore. And they want to do something. And that's the time for them to learn those topics. Apply. Application is the next highest level skill. Identify which of the areas these subjects would fall under. Which of these 6 areas? Rocks and gems. Which area, class? How about community helpers, firefighters, police, teachers? A preschool topic. Cooperation is about community, very much so. Or it could be understanding people as well. Handwriting.
Personal development.
Oh gosh. It could be either one, couldn't it? It could be either one. If you're teaching it to kindergarten and they're struggling to hold a pencil and make the letter, it's more, right? Personal development. In 5th grade, when they're dotting their I's with hearts, it might be more self-expression. And certainly, as writing would be self-expression, their own writing. The highest level. Oh, next is, did I say? Let's see, I think I got mixed up on the level there because I have one that goes down and one that goes up. So I apologize about that. Well, of course, the most advanced skill is to create something on your own. So then the best way, class, that I can find out if you understand the curriculum and how to do a lesson plan would be, say, create a lesson plan and teach it. And then write or tell me why it worked or why it didn't work, what happened. Do you see how much more? That's what real learning is about, not about name the 4 steps, right? It's about actually doing. And so I want to be sure that everybody is just acquainted with that. So I do have a handout for that. This afternoon, we're going to actually experience 4 more. We're going to do the cooperation lesson plan, which is fun. It's just throwing a ball around. Helen's going to show us what she does to recognize birthdays in pre-KK, which is really fun. And we'll have a 15-minute introduction to VMLA handwriting, which I know some of you are excited about. So, oh, look at that. 1 minute to 12. Questions or comments?
Short questions or comments.
Would you pass these out? Thank you. Would you pass these out? Thank you. Come on, somebody has a question. No?
I remember the word synthesis at the end of Bloom's. Is that what you meant by creative?
You know,
They've updated
it and changed the words,
So
Lori.
I mean, it means the same thing, yes?
Creation and synthesis?
You're just using the information you learned
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
and doing something with it yourself. I
Exactly.
like that creation. I just haven't been updated.
A few years ago, they renamed everything and tweaked them a little
Are
bit.
there tests?
6.
Oh, here it is. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
There's 2 different though. Which one is the order that they are supposed to go in?
Remembering's the most basic.
Remember, understand.
Create is the most advanced. This is a bad teacher. I gave them to you in 2 different orders. Well, I did it on purpose to test your understanding, to see if you noticed.
Normally they present it in a pyramid.
Yes, yes, it is. I had it in a pyramid shape, but that was the old words, and Karen, of course, wanted it to be up to date because she's a detail person.
Because she typed this all out a couple of years ago.
Let me end today with this quotation, and I think you'll probably agree with it for yourself. Everyone who remembers his own educational experience remembers teachers, not methods and techniques. So when all is said and done, I'm giving you all this information, so much to think about and learn. But you know what really matters when you get in that classroom is your enthusiasm and love for the subject and your love and patience for the children. And if you have those things, they'll learn. Doesn't have to be perfect. Don't have to have these. Just know that these lesson plans, they didn't just come like that. She's done the BEAR curriculum for several years, right? So don't be too hard on yourselves if this seems like, oh my gosh. No, you don't have to do one lesson plan like this for every lesson you teach all day. You'd be working around the clock, wouldn't you? And already first-year teachers work till midnight every night.
Vimala Rogers has written 3 main books. This is one of them, Your Handwriting Can Change Your Life, and I wanted to tell you something she had to say in here. Although the hand, or the teeth, or the toes, depending, holds the pen, it's the brain that causes it to move as it does. By changing writing patterns, we simultaneously reconfigure the neural pathways in the brain that record our self-image. In each stroke of the Vimala alphabet supports the child of God who lives within us all. The child who has a hearty sense of self-esteem, gutsy self-confidence, vigorous curiosity, a positive outlook, intrepid creativity, the wisdom of innocence, rampant tolerance, and clear communication skills. That's why we like to use the Vimala alphabet. A friend of mine, who's a student of Vimala's as well, has written this book. She was a Waldorf mom and helped in many ways with Waldorf education, and she wrote a book geared toward that audience called Soul Development Through Handwriting, the Waldorf Approach to the Vimala Alphabet. And this is a lovely resource for teachers. It explains how this all works. It also has a series in the back, workbook type pages that you're welcome to copy. But also a very useful thing, especially if you're not totally familiar with yourself with using this particular system of writing but would like to, it has a whole section on less desirable forms and how to correct them. So it's very, very valuable. And one of the things she says in here, in her book, when we teach children the Vimala alphabet, we help them preserve their connection to their innate spiritual wisdom and express their noblest human traits. It helps remove hindrances to the full expression of one's unique self. So I got interested in this system of writing, and when the first year that I started using it with the kids, it was an experiment. I had experimented with it myself, and so had Usha, and we thought it was worth giving a shot using it with the students. And as you might imagine, there was a certain amount of resistance, because here's a system of writing. I'm teaching it to first grade, second grade, a kind of cursive writing. And not all kids have real great fine motor skills during those years. I had one student in particular who had very poor fine motor control. And his mom said to me toward the end of the year, this is someone who has a younger child who's going to be coming up into my class, you know, are you going to be using this alphabet forever? Not that I would keep my child out of your school because of it, but just wondering. And I said, basically, I don't know, this is an experiment, we're trying this. And she was saying, well, my child, his handwriting is barely readable, and it probably wouldn't be that great anyway, but it's especially bad with this system. And I just said, well, I don't know yet, we'll see. And we worked, and the next year, this child was in my class again, and we kept working and using it. And by the end of that year, his handwriting had vastly improved. He was proud of his efforts, and she said, I should have just trusted the process. The actual letter forms can be very, very useful with different children to help them with particular qualities. And I'm going to just tell you 2 quick stories of how I've seen that play out with kids. One particular student did not like to do handwriting. Well, that's going to come up with every subject. It's like, what if I don't want to? And my usual response is, that's fine, you don't have to want to. You just need to do it. And they oftentimes will totally accept that. It's like, oh, okay. But he really did not like handwriting, and he'd sit there and he'd take forever to do it, and it just didn't want to happen. So I started each day, the first thing he'd have on his handwriting paper is this ligature, the GH. And the quality that's associated with this combination is non-resistance. So I thought, what the heck, can't probably get any worse, so we'll try it. So on his paper each day, I'd have him do a line of GH before he did whatever the letter of the day was. And the very first day, same thing, it's just like, me, 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 me. So, I'm using the principles of progressive development. I offered him a reward if he would get it done without complaining, and he did it. And the second day, sort of the same thing happened. By the third day, he came in, he took his paper, he sat down, and he started writing. And from that point on, he totally quit complaining about doing handwriting. He'd come, he'd sit down with his paper, do his line of GHs, and then just go on, as though it weren't a big deal at all. And I just went, whoa, And I've used this one myself many, many times. You wake up in the morning and you're going, I'm not getting out of this bed. And I just, it's like start writing GH on the sheet, and pretty soon you've popped up and are going on. Another one, and I'm going to have you do this with me if you will. Many of you have learned cursive writing at some time in your life, probably. And if you were like me, you were taught to do S's like this was the capital S, this was the lowercase s. So then I'd like you to do approximately an equal amount of them doing this. Where everything's curved and you end up going to the right. Alternating upper and lower case if you remember to. And then if anybody has anything that they notice about the way it looks, the way it feels, your experience of it, if you would be willing to share. Kathleen?
The Vomala way of doing it is much calmer. And I don't know if part of it is for me as a child, when I see that kind of S and I do that kind of S, I have experience to draw on of having it drilled into my head over and over and over again. And so just that, like, I don't know, it's just this.
The association partly perhaps, yeah?
It's just calmer.
Uh-huh. Great, thank you. Sean?
I've actually been practicing the Vimala handwriting for a couple months and working with S because it's the first letter of my name. And I haven't written an S the way I used to in so long, and just doing this line felt like this, just doing the Vimala has been like I've been wearing tie pants and doing like Tai Chi or something outside, you know? And all of a sudden, wearing these old S's is like getting into a business suit and putting on dress shoes.
Yes. All right. And with a lot of these things, the way to get the best experience of what it is just try it. Try it both ways and just see. Does it make any difference for you? Would it make any difference for your students? Is it worthwhile thing to pursue? The other S story, which we heard a little bit about before, the letter S, the quality that it's related to is calmness. So it's declaration of intent, or some people would say affirmation that could go with it if you wanted it to. I can be calm when I need to. But it's also about balance, just, not being too much one way or too much the other way. It's great for us as adults when we try to whack our mic. No, when we, you get too many things going on in life and you become real frenetic, and just writing lines of S. This is a great thing to do if you're in traffic and you're starting to experience a bit of road rage or whatever, people are cutting you off. When you're stopped at a red light, I don't recommend you doing it when you're actually driving in traffic, but when you're just on your knee or on the steering wheel or whatever, just some lines of S, and it's the same effect basically for me as like just remembering to breathe. So it's another tool in our tool belt for self-control and calmness. And so one of the things we offer to kids when they are in the calming corner, if they're needing to get recentered, is to grab a clipboard with a piece of paper if they want and write some lines of S, or like that one student just wrote it in the palm of his hands and thought of silence or stillness. To do that, it can make a remarkable difference. It's just so interesting to me how that can happen.
And the child gets to choose if he wants to have a present or not. Now, this paper, as you can see, has been used many times, and I like it, so there are many kindergartens in here. So we have a circle, and we celebrate Sean's birthday. And Sean, let's see, Sean brought a present for us. So we wonder what it's in here. All right. So the kids all look really interesting when I'm doing the kids. Although I have seen it, they love it.
By the way, this comes from I Love You Rituals, I think, by Becky Bailey.
I love you rituals.
So here, wow, look at Sean. He has a birthday and he brought us a present. Gosh, I wonder what's in here. Wow, it's nice and warm, it wiggles, it moves. Gosh, what in the world did he bring us? Well, let's see what's in here. I'm gonna open, and everybody looks really interesting. Oh, my baby. So we open it carefully. What's in here?
Well, there's no.
Oh my gosh, he brought us a fan. Oh, and it's nice and cold. Gosh. Let's see who else is bringing. You brought a friend. Oh my God. His point finger. I can't believe he brought two surprises. And look, there's the middle finger. That is the longest finger I've ever seen. And look how nice they all are, all being together like that. And here's the ring finger. This is a really fun thing. You get to wear a ring on it. And gosh, he brought the pinky. Wow, guys, look at, he brought the whole hand. Thank you so much, Sean, for bringing us your hand today. So after they eat and heard the story, it's a good time to do it. So I would tell them that we are going to be like the Australian Aborigines that go out and about, and they are out there where it's cold, and they're making a circle just like that, like the sun. We have a little circle in the middle, and then we like the sun, we are coming out. And what I'm gonna give to you, I'm gonna be putting rocks on you, and the trick is, you guys, you cannot move, because what's gonna happen if you move? Rocks fall off. The first rock that I'm going to give you is the one on the forehead. And that means you have to really hold still that forehead. Otherwise, the rock will fall off. So let's see how still we can be. Now, if it does fall off, do not worry about that. You can put it back on. Look at your rocks you have. And now move by. You guys will read.
I wanted to share with you just a little bit about the writing activity. I asked Helen to bring this in. Her daughter was formerly in our school, and this is her journal from 4th grade, I think it is. And I just went through and picked out a few of the topics the teacher gave her to write on, gave the class to write on. And one of them is, what are my hopes for this year? How can I show respect for the earth and all creatures? What are my dreams for myself? What uplifts or inspires me? And then the teacher put at the bottom, these are good, but I bet there are lots of things that make you feel good. And the next day, who is a person that makes me feel good, inspired, and relaxed? And the teacher wrote, this is good, but you didn't put as much energy into this as others. And so the next page she wrote, okay, I like having Tweety in the classroom. Tweety was the bird we had at the time. And it is fun to learn about Australia. And I like playing 500 at recess. And kickball is fun too. But it's getting boring after you played it a lot. And I like going to the park when the fountain is open. And I enjoy math. And I like to play with my friends. And I also like knitting with my mom. I liked it when Satake showed us slides about Australia. Arts in class is pretty fun. I like it when we did I can't read it, and when we did kangaroos. And I also like it when we watched the Olympics. So I thought that was a great response. Another topic was my dream island. If I had a dream island, it would be, and so on. And the year they did these journals was the year that that incident happened that you may have heard me talk about, that we were walking to the library one day, 5 of the kids in that class and I were walking over, and 2 of them had come from other schools. And one of them said, I never learned anything at my other school. And this other girl said, well, I learned a lot there, but I didn't learn anything about myself. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was so beautiful, and I thought that was an example of something, ways that the teacher was giving writing assignments to help the children learn about themselves. So we've given you maybe 15 or different examples of activities today to help children in personal development and cooperation and developing their spiritual sides. And I think we're done, just about.
I want to just add something about the stones. I have bigger stones, I didn't bring them all, but bigger stones on a little body really pushes them down. It makes them feel really connected. And so I realized I didn't have all my big heavy stones, but even my big heavy stone kind of seemed small on your guys' body. So just so you know that. Let's see, we'll put an extra special rock on that leg so that leg learns how to stay still. Or, I help him a little bit. But I tried to be quiet. I think a year or 2 ago I started to do an extension of our program in the afternoon as well. And sometimes I didn't quite know what to do with the energy in the afternoon with the kids, because for 13 or 12 years I did the mornings, so I had that pretty much done. But now an extension, what to do with them and how wasn't quite clear to me. And either it seemed like they were too tired, or I couldn't find. I felt like, okay, I tried to calm their energy by doing intellectual things. Like I thought, well, maybe they have extra energy and I need to guide them into intellectual. Just use that energy, and it didn't really work. And I thought, well, maybe they're just overwhelmed and they need playtime. And that really, frankly, didn't work out that well either. And so then I guess all of a sudden I remembered something that I used to do, stations. It's kind of like Montessori, you know, when you have to be in a station, you can use any station you want to, where there's not anybody there yet, and you cannot talk. And you get to stay there for 20 minutes, or like I do it 30 minutes, 35, 40 minutes even, because they say the first 20 minutes you just get into it, and you kind of come out on that stage, but then you go in and even deeper. So I just now say to my kids, so I said...
Give them an example of what a station would be
Yeah,
like.
so now when I have a station you can draw, a station if you need to eat, that's always a choice then. You have Legos, you have pictures, you can build blocks, you can make mosaics. I have like 12 different things what they possibly could do. And then I have beads too, the fusing beads, if you know what that is. They can make the little frogs. They can do weaving, so anything they choose. The thing is though, we cannot talk and we cannot play with anybody. So this is just time for ourselves. And what I found, what it does, that it's amazing how quiet they are and how much they actually like it. Because, you know, I don't know about you, but sometimes I just want to put my rock here. And I don't want Rose to put it over here. I just want it here without having to, you know, fight for it, argue for it, or you just want it, you and nobody, really. You and with yourself. And really that is the best. I throw it in sometimes in the morning when I just think it's too much going on and they're all over the place. I say, okay guys, stations. And immediately it calms down. I do put music on and they get to choose. And, you know, I have to remind them, you guys, keep the voices inside. You know, there's some talking voices, so keep the voices inside. And if you have to whisper, you can come and ask me quietly. And it's amazing how long they actually can, but because I think they need it, like 6-7 hours there with their peers, they just need a break from that.
Anyone else be willing to share what you wrote about?
We've been doing, we call them rocks, we've stood still since I've been here. Years ago, and we've been doing that for a long time, but it was nice to actually get to experience it from the children's perspective, because it's been a long while since I've done that. And during that time, it really kind of inspired me to make some changes in our scheduling, because it made me think about how it was great to have that moment, and then when you asked us to reflect, we usually do reflection journals, but it's at a different time of our day, and I was like, why not do it after meditation? Like, that would make the most sense. And so, like, being able to experience it as a child would inspired me on what changes I needed to make for our classroom. So I'm going to try it out in some practice. So.
I have a general comment. I always feel this at the end of the online class, and I feel it now probably even more because it's been live and I mean, well, that's live, but in person with all the real bodies here. But I know this is a little general, but it just feels like I can just be my best self when you give all these really specific things and also general things and also ideas. Well, if this doesn't work, try this. But it's very, very palpable. Thank you.
Like Karen said, none of these ideas, very few of these ideas were original. But it's how to take it, find the deepest meaning in it, and share it, and bring out the best in each other and their kids. So thank you all for this opportunity.